Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning into this video. I'm pretty excited because I've got a good friend of mine here who's going to talk to us about another play therapy approach. This is Lisa Dion, and she is going to talk to us about synergetic play therapy and give us some good info. And then at the end, some resources for learning more about this play therapy approach. So, hi, Lisa. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
me.
Thank
So
you.
excited to hear more about this. So, let's just start with the question, the main one here. What is
What is it?
synergetic play therapy? Interesting name. So, people might even not even be able to infer what
Mhm.
this is about. So, let's start with that question.
Created in 2008, and it is a research-informed model of play therapy where we're blending the therapeutic power of play together with a couple of really interesting pieces: mindfulness, attachment, therapist authenticity, physics. That I want to always make people go like, wait, what? I'm like, yes, physics has a place in play therapy, nervous system regulation. And it's really like taking a handful of different disciplines and bringing them together, which where I want to go with that is what the heck does the word synergy mean? Because I think that will, more than just this sort of like abstract definition, will help be able to like, what is it actually? So it's a physics word, Robert.
Okay. All right. I was bad at physics. I don't think I ever
Yeah,
took it.
yeah, it's a physics word. It's a word that was coined by Buckminster Fuller, who is a famous physicist. And the word synergetic means systems in transformation.
Okay.
And what I love about it is, for me, it captures the essence of what's happening in the therapeutic relationship between the therapist and the child, or the therapist and the family, right? Whoever is being identified as the client. And so it's this idea, and it's more like a feeling, really. It's this feeling of, okay, so the child is a system,
Mhm.
right? And the therapist is a system. And bringing them together, the synergy that happens between the two of them, the transformation that they're able to create is far greater than either of them could ever have done on their own.
Mm.
And what I also really appreciate about it is it honors that it's not just the child that's transforming, right? It's not system in transformation, it's systems in transformation. So it also creates a space and acknowledges that there's an impact on the clinician as well, and that there is a transformation or an evolution that's also happening inside the therapist as they are with the child. And there's something about that for me that's really quite beautiful.
Mhm.
Um, that it's not just about me as the play therapist over here doing something to the client over here. It is us together in transformation. And I'll say a couple other little pieces about that too. It also, like, here's my favorite part of the therapeutic process, which is really
Mhm.
like the place where SPT plays. So there's the like understanding of what's happening inside of the client, like what's happening in their brain, what's happening in their body. And then there's that, and then what's happening inside the therapist, right? What's happening in the therapist's mind, in their brain, inside their body. And then there's the space in between. And the space in between is my favorite thing to talk about. And that is the place of synergetic play therapy. Like,
Okay.
what's happening between us? So, how is my nervous system interacting with your nervous system? How is your nervous system interacting with my nervous system? How is my mindful awareness about what's happening? How does that impact the relationship? How is me supporting your mindful awareness about what's happening in you impact your healing, impact your integration, right? How does attachment, my own attachment to myself, your attachment to yourself, the attachment that's happening in the place between us, like how does that come together to create a deeper level of transformation? So, as I'm describing this, hopefully you can sort of hear, right? It's like
Right.
really about this very deep, like interpersonal process that is aimed fundamentally at, so we could say, like, what are the overarching goals for
Hmm.
synergetic play therapy? There's really two, actually, I would say three overarching goals. The first is what we call attaching or connecting to ourself, right? So we know that so many children, for so many reasons, are disconnected, right? They're disconnected. They don't know how to stay connected in their activation. Maybe they've had messages about it's not safe to connect. I mean, all of those pieces. And so SPT believes that the ability to be with, right? So the ability to be with the different parts of our story that are hard, the ability to move towards the challenging sensation, the ability to move towards the challenging thoughts in a way that's you're mindfully being with, we view
Hmm.
that as one of the cornerstones for healing. So,
Okay.
how do I, as the therapist, support that development inside the child? Which kind of goes into the next piece, which is this belief that every child in their own like unique presentation and expression of who they are is worthy exactly as they are. And
Mm-hmm.
that children come into the play space with so many messages about who they should be, who they think they should be. And so, how do we support the child in actually appreciating who they are, like
Right.
as they are, right? And how do we help them? Again, it goes back into that place of connecting deep within. And then I would say then the third one is because children are coming into the play space, working on the hard stuff, right? They have connected with the hard stuff. They have patterns of activation that are attached to that, right? They've got patterns of
Hmm.
protection, patterns of activation. And so, how do we repattern that? So, more than just helping a child integrate their perception or helping put the hard stuff into their narrative or helping them from a kind of a like sort of how do I think about this, how do I feel about this, how do we also work with the patterns of activation in the system so that we're repatterning the actual pattern of protection as well. So it's both, it's a very somatically based process too.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
there's a mouthful for you.
Right. Well, I heard a lot of relational pieces in there.
Yeah.
This is obviously very relational based between
Yes.
the therapist and the child.
Yes.
And then, of course, when you were first describing it, all these integrative pieces, right?
Right.
So, really, a kind of a classic integrative therapy, if you will.
Very much so.
And of course, we'll get into this a little bit more in a moment, but focused primarily on children. Is that correct?
In the play therapy model version of it, and these components that we're talking about do apply to
Mm.
anyone with a nervous system,
Right.
right?
There you
and
go.
do
Yes.
right and
Yeah.
do apply to any relationship ultimately. But the way synergetic play therapy is taught, we are teaching it through the application of therapeutic play. And so we're using play as the mechanism in which we are doing the work in the play therapy model version of it.
Sure.
Yes.
So when we think about, and I wanted to ask you about, okay, well, who would you use synergetic play therapy for? If we're talking about populations, if we're talking about issues, obviously, a lot of people get driven into therapy via a need or an issue. Is there any specifics on that, or is it pretty in general? We already mentioned the child version for children. What
Yeah.
else would you add to that?
So, SPT, Synergetic Play Therapy, has both non-directive and directive applications. And based on the age of the child and what the child is presenting with, would guide the clinician into one way or the other. So, because of that, it's not like, oh, it's only these kids from this age range with this particular set of challenges. Because you can take synergetic play therapy, for example, and you can use it in a more non-directive way between a caregiver and a 1 year old,
Mhm.
facilitating, play between that relationship. Or you could also use it in a more non-directive type of a play therapy approach, more classically between the ages of 2 and 11, as we tend to, or 2 and 12, as we tend to think about it. But then when there's also children, as you know, where actually non-directive sometimes is not necessarily, there might be some directive components that we need to bring in because we are working on a particular skill. And so if that's needed, then there's also an approach there. So here's what I would say that synergetic play therapy can really be applied to um, whoever, like whatever the child is working on in whatever age they're walking in the door with, but how you would do it is really unique to the child, and whether or not you need to bring in additional supports is also on the table too. So it's like,
Okay.
it's a great, like, yes, and sometimes and.
Gotcha. Okay.
Does that make sense? So it
It
really
does.
can be like a foundational way to work with the child at whatever the age, but there's nuances. And yes, sometimes you have to bring in other services, or you have to bring in other, other approaches, and because that's what's needed.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I've always found interesting, and maybe like initially in my career drawn to more integrative therapies is because they already lend themselves to the ability to bring in something else if you think for this particular child you it would be helpful. Oh, this other thing I know of, I think this child would respond really well to this. And because I'm already doing this integrative approach, it's just easier to integrate something else in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Well, and even going back to the word like synergetic, like systems and transformation, well, you can bring in other modalities, right?
Yeah.
So it's like all of it. So it's really, here's my new tagline. Actually, I won't say new because I've been saying it for the last 2 years. But my tagline for SPT is a model of play therapy that plays well with others.
Nice.
That's my, because it's very
Yeah.
inclusive in
Uh-huh.
in that, right? There's
Yeah.
there's a, there's room, and that's an interesting thing. I think sometimes when people hear that, there's actually room for other models of play therapy within synergetic play therapy,
Yeah.
if that's what's needed.
Sure. I
Yeah,
love that though.
yeah,
It just opens you up to individualize things for the client. One of my favorite things to say is like, you know, what is it that the client needs from you, right? Instead of forcing a client into a specific approach or a specific theory. So I like your tagline.
yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm sure people watching this may have been piqued their interest and like, okay, I want to like dive into this a little deeper. I want to learn more about this. So, how can they get more information on synergetic play therapy?
Yeah, there's a couple different places. So there's the Institute, which is the Synergetic Play Therapy Institute, which is synergeticplaytherapy.com. And we have our introduction to synergetic play therapy courses, which are online and also in person. There is a certification program if people feel jazzed about it and want to go on and actually get, fully credentialed in it. But then there's also other entry points like the book. So, Aggression in Play Therapy, I think, is a really great introduction to synergetic play therapy principles and philosophy, because we're talking about it with something that's really hard, right? That's like the intense stuff, it's the big stuff. So, that's what I tell people. It's like, if you're curious, before jumping into,
Mhm.
it's a big time commitment to jump into a training program.
Sure.
Check out the book, because if something in the book lights someone up, then that's a clue that the programs might be, worth the time and the investment. We also have a whole YouTube channel, Synergetic Play Therapy, that has tons of videos on it too, little segments. So there's lots of ways where people can kind of put their toe in the water and get curious. One of my biggest beliefs is that our own congruency with the philosophy of play therapy that we jump into is really important in the healing
Yeah.
journey. And so I really encourage people to test it out. And when it's like, no, I really think, well, then jump in. Because that's just really important, right? We need to be able to embody the philosophy. It needs to feel
Mhm.
like us. I think that's a really
Absolutely.
important part of the healing journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
What a great point to kind of wrap it up and end on that statement, because it's such a good one. Um, so all these resources are here posted on the video as well, so people can check them out, explore, and you're available, I'm sure, to be gotten in touch with if somebody has a question as well, like if they want to schedule a training or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so thank you, Lisa, for sharing this with us. It's so cool, and
Yeah.
giving people just a little bit more information who maybe didn't know, and sharing this approach with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me and for
Yeah,
making the time.
absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Just
Thanks,
come
everyone.
back, watch more videos. We'll see you in another clip. Bye.
Awesome.